someone from the test pilot school at Edwards to come and talk to us about what the school is, what it does, and so forth. Many of you know that I'm the guy that does the, or for many years, runs the tour program at the base. And it took me a while to really understand the gravity of the fact that we have a test pilot school at Edwards. You know, and this is something from the tour, so feel free to, you know, munch popcorn and not throw overripe fruits and vegetables. But this is part of what I say. There are lots of places that Air Force officers can go learn how to fly, become a pilot. But if a seasoned pilot wants to become a test pilot, there's only one Air Force school for that. And it's here at Edwards Air Force Base. 20 to 25 students per class, you know, I'm sure our guest will get into that more. But there's one in the Air Force, and it's here. It's a tremendous, and not all the students are pilots. About half are. The others have other fields that I'm sure Colonel Webb will get into. And it's here. It's just right down the street. Does anybody else find this astounding? You know.
Do we have an astounding speaker?
Yes, we do.
Remains to be seen.
I don't want to put any pressure on. I'll take care of that. Thank you. How many of you have ever been out to the base and taken a tour? Okay. See? Did you know that for the rest of you that haven't gone, did you know we gave tours? Yeah. If you go to the Edwards Air Force Base homepage, www.edwards.af.mil, look up at the top, there's some words in red letters. One of them is the word tours. You just click on that and that'll tell you when our general public tours are. Yeah. And
Edwards.af.
Yeah, www.edwards.af for Air Force, .mil for military.
And then go
very simple. Yeah.
Go to tours and we see a picture of Big D there.
Now, you won't sign my picture at the post office yet. The front and side view. It's very important. The tours are free, but I would really rather think of them as prepaid. Because the idea is to come visit your tax bill, see what you want, learn about what we do and why it's important for America. You know, and we have a rich history, and it's just right here. So what I'd like to do is turn the floor over to our guest speaker, Colonel Charles Spider Webb. He's the commandant of the school. The fate of our nation is in his hands, but no pressure.
Sure. Right.
Sir, why don't you tell us about the school?
I've known Dennis now for 15 plus years. He does a great service for our base as the face to the community. So thank you for the introduction, and Ryan, thanks for reaching out and giving me a chance to swing by this evening. So again, Chuck Webb, call sign Spider. You may know Air Force, they give nicknames. My last name's Webb, so it's not very clever, but you don't get a choice. They just tell you what your call sign is. In fact, if you show any reservation, usually it gets to be something worse. So, but Spider Webb's what I go by, and my background is a pilot in the Air Force. Had a chance to fly today. Came dressed for work, so this is kind of how we serve y'all out there at the base from the pilot community. Flew F-16s operationally. Many of y'all may recognize that as the airplane that the Thunderbirds fly. So it's a single engine, single seat fighter airplane, and that's what I did operationally. But about 15 years ago, I applied for and made the choice to move into the test business. And that test business, as I'm sure y'all are aware, the cradle of Air Force aviation, I would say, to be honest, world's aviation, is right out here at Edwards. And those golden era of flight test, if you will, with Chuck Yeager and Scott Carpenter and the whole astronaut community, that was all right out here in the 1950s. And so if Edwards is the cradle of aviation, what I like to use as the analogy is the test pilot school is the incubator. That's the place where we produce those test pilots that will then go on to fly those experimental airplanes. And so I'd like to share with you just a little bit about our school, and certainly I'm very interested in any questions you have, or would love to talk offline if there's things that we can help you with, or always enjoy coming and talking to the schools. It's an honor to get to come out and visit with the community. I just want to share a few things that are going on just about 15 miles from here out at the base. We have a classic base there called Wright-Patterson, and that's where kind of the programs are run from. So if you're building an F-22, an F-35, or a KC-46, some of the new planes that we've got right now going through development, there's hundreds of folks organized in groups at Wright-Patterson to support that aspect. And so that's where the flying started as well. But this dry lake bed that we have out here, Rosamond Lake Bed, and also Muroc, which is what the base sits directly adjacent to, that's a national resource. Think of it as a 5-mile by 5-mile runway. In any direction you want to go, it is 25,000 feet long. So most runways are about 10,000 feet long. That's a pretty good sized runway for a paved surface. The actual landing runway out at Edwards is 15,000 feet long. You can't find a longer piece of concrete anywhere in the country. But even more, I think, interesting is the 5 miles that you can use in any direction there adjacent to the runway at the lake bed. And so during initial or early test development of things like jet engines and helicopters, they wanted to have the ability to land in any direction at any given moment. And so that's why the base moved all the flight tests, the Air Force moved all the flight tests to the base here in 1944. And that was when we started the program. So we just hit our 70th anniversary. So 2014 was the 70th year of the Air Force Test Pilot School. There are 4 schools in the world, though. A lot of folks don't know that. So there's a cute little school that the Navy runs out on the East Coast. It's actually very accomplished. They have their niche. So the Air Force, we're more associated with fighter aircraft. The Navy actually invests a lot of their time and energy in rotary wing, or what you may call helicopters. So they have a significant helicopter operation at their test pilot school, and we take care of most of the fighters. So that said, we exchange, every class we have, we'll have an Air Force officer out at Navy, and that's called Paxton River, or just Pax Rivers in Maryland. And Pax River will send a Navy student that will participate in every Air Force class. So we have a very robust exchange with our Navy teammates, and they have a great program out there. Ours, I think, is a little bit more resourced. It is the Air Force, so we are focused exclusively on planes. The Navy obviously has a submarine mission, a ship mission, and then the aviation. So the 2 schools are very similar, but I think we're a little bit more robust. The English have the oldest school in the country, or I'm sorry, in the world. 1943, they actually started a year before us, and they like to remind us of that. The English are very, very proud of their traditions. And then the French have a school as well, and that's in the south of France. And we also have exchanges with those schools. So we'll always have an Air Force student at either the English or the French school, and whichever one we're not at, the Navy will have. So we've always got a U.S. presence in either the English school or the French school, and they'll also have students with us. So that's kind of the way the big international schools are arranged. So we've been here at Edwards for 70 years now. In the 60s, the school took on a very different mission. That was our race to space. And so many of y'all are probably aware when President Kennedy said we're going to the moon, instead of flying airplanes, we spent a lot of time at the test pilot school teaching some of those space techniques and developing rockets and that type of thing. That lasted for about 10 years, or about the duration of the race to space. In '71, the school took on its current name, the Air Force Test Pilot School. And so we're often referred to just by our acronym TPS. So there's an Air Force TPS and a Navy TPS here in the U.S. So for the first 30 years of the school, it was pilots only. Yeager and all of his contemporaries, it was exclusively pilots. But certainly these planes don't fly, much less get designed, without great engineering support. So in the mid-70s, they introduced engineers to the class. And they actually split the class into 2 halves. So about 10 pilots in each class, and about 10 engineers in each class to develop those testers to go into these programs that you're probably pretty familiar with. So that was in the mid-70s when we started admitting engineers. Shortly thereafter, we started including navigators. So a lot of these bigger airplanes have a need to develop the navigational capabilities, not just the flying or the basic engineering. And so that was the core of the school for about 30 years. until about 3 years ago when we added our first remotely piloted aircraft operator. We would say RPAs. You may know them as drones or UAVs. If you see that on the news, unmanned aerial vehicles. And so what I find kind of fascinating with where the Air Force is going in regards to drones, over half of our airplanes in the last 5 years that the Air Force has built and bought are remotely piloted. Over half the pilots that we produce each year are now remotely piloted aircraft operators, or RPA pilots. And that's a big cultural change for the Air Force. For the first 100 years, literally, of aviation, it was all about teaching that man or woman how to operate that airplane and how to use their skills directly in combat. And now we're doing it remotely. You may be aware that right now over Afghanistan, we will have probably 20 to 25 RPAs flying around the clock, and they're being flown from right outside of Las Vegas. So the way that works is they have a satellite uplink, so they sit in Las Vegas, basically on the outskirts of town there, Creech Air Force Base. They fly these RPAs via satellite while they're looking in the theater, doing their intelligence gathering and their reconnaissance. And then when it's time for the aircraft to land, they actually hand that airplane off. The command link, the remote control, if you will, is passed to a physical operator there at the base. So they take off from Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan using line of sight directly with the airplane, and then once they get airborne, it gets handed off to the satellite and they fly it here in the U.S. And so right now we are flying more RPAs every day than we're flying what we would call traditional manned aircraft, and more than half of our pilots are now RPA pilots. And so when we saw that evolution in the Air Force, we made a big change to start bringing in RPA pilots to the test pilot school. That's the student body, if you will. The way the school is organized is 2 classes, so 20 students per class. It's a year-long program, but we offset it by 6 months. So at any given time, you've got 40 students there at the program, but they're each 6 months offset, those classes. So we'll bring a class in January. They're the baby class because they just showed up. What happens is they will go from January to January. There's a class that goes from June to June, if you will. And so you show up for 6 months, you're the baby class, and then you become the senior class when your senior class graduates, and a class comes in now to replace you as a baby class. And we just keep this cycle running out at the school throughout the year. So we're basically running 40 students through the program, but we break them into groups of 20. In that group of 20, I mentioned about half pilots, half engineers, but we also have those exchange officers that we alluded to earlier. So we'll usually have 3 internationals in every class. My class I went through back in '01, so it's been a while for me, but we had 5 internationals. I had a Belgian, an Italian, a Canadian, a Singaporean, and a Frenchman. And so it was very interesting for me to get to spend a year with these other international pilots and learn about how their countries treat aviation and how they do experimental flight tests, which is what we're fundamentally there for, is to produce those testers and those engineers to develop those next generation systems. And then just a little bit about the planes we fly, and then certainly if you have any questions. We've got 4 primary airplanes that we fly. The F-16, which for me is exciting because that's what I grew up with in the Air Force, and it's still a great training aircraft. The T-38, many of y'all may know that as a twin-engine, small trainer. It was the first supersonic trainer, or able to break the speed of sound, the sound barrier, speed of sound, but it was built in the 50s. So the T-38s that we're flying are 60-plus years old out there at the base. They still do a great job, but engines are very old, airframes are getting old, and so we do have to treat those with a little extra attention.
Do they tell bad jokes?
Do
Do they tell bad jokes, these 60-year-old?
Yeah. Moderately bad, right? So Dennis knows how to keep it filtered for the crowd, but he told us, Zinger, you had the Indian Air Force in with us about a month ago. You had some interesting commentary.
Yes, we did.
The other airplane we fly is the C-12. That's basically a Beechcraft. It's a twin prop, about a 10-person aircraft, and so it gives a real interesting experience. If you grew up in fighters, small airplanes with jet engines, propellers are completely foreign, and they bring a very interesting challenge to mastering them. If you grew up with propeller airplanes, the jet engines, a lot faster, a lot more maneuverable, and so either community that you grew up in the Air Force, we've got a plane that will challenge you in a way that you haven't seen. And the last aircraft that we use, if you will, is a glider. I think Ryan and I were chatting before. Right up here at Tehachapi is world-class gliding sailplanes. Not too many folks know that, but there are a lot of international records set out of the glider port right up here in Tehachapi. And so we fly both aerobatic gliders, so they can do loops and aileron rolls and fly very high-performance maneuvers. And we also have some pretty benign gliders to teach the students some real fundamentals. But the cool thing about gliders, first off, it's my favorite flying. There is no flying, I think, more pure or exciting than sailplanes. But also, it has some real basic aircraft performance. So in a glider, when you push forward on the stick, the trees get bigger. When you pull back on the stick, the nose comes up and the trees get smaller. It's a very direct link with those control surfaces and that performance. And so gliders are just a great basic way to teach fundamentals of aerodynamics. So those are our primary airplanes, but you may know out at Edwards they've got one of everything for the most part. And that's the coolest thing I would say about being a student test pilot going through the program is most pilots will fly one, maybe two airplanes in their Air Force career. So I flew the F-16. That was all I was going to do for 20 years of Air Force service until I got accepted into the test community. And then as a student out here, they will fly 20 to 25 different airplanes. That's a big deal. In fact, that's kind of our bragging rights. The street cred is how deep is your logbook? How many different airplanes have you flown is kind of what testers like to compare experiences on. And so the students will get to fly everything on the ramp, on the parking area there at Edwards, from the C-17, big monster cargo airplane, to the fighters, the bombers, and everything we have out at Edwards. That gets you through about 10 or 12 airplanes. And then we'll go down to Long Beach. If they're available, we'll fly the Goodyear blimp, just because it's a very different experience. And then we'll go international, and we'll get a chance to fly the Brits equipment, or maybe the Israelis, and get a chance to kind of share those experiences internationally. So that is a real exciting part of the program, to go out and sample all these different airplanes. But probably the coolest thing the students get to do, and the senior class right now, the ones that are probably a couple months from graduation, they're going to do this starting Monday, is we run them down to Tucson, where Davis-Monthan Air Force Base is. And you may know that's where the single base now remaining for the A-10. A meaning attack. Attack 10 airplane. It is considered probably the most fierce battlefield aircraft we've produced probably in the last 50 years. It's a tank buster. Basically, they figured out how big of a gun they wanted to put in the air for strafing enemy tanks, and they built an airplane around it. So the A-10 is just a beast. It's got a 30mm cannon, so the round is about that long. The bullet that comes out of it is a good 8 inches, and it's about 2 pounds of depleted uranium, because uranium is very, very dense. It gets up there to about 2,000 miles an hour, and they fire about 20 of these rounds a second. And that's called the GAU-8 Avenger cannon. A-10 is built entirely around the GAU-8. And what we allow the students to do is they go out there and they spend a day learning a little bit about the airplane. They take some academics. They take an emergency procedures simulator to make sure they know how to handle emergencies. And they go out the next day and they fly the A-10. There's always an instructor pilot flying with you. So the student pilot will sit in the left seat, instructor in the right, or front seat, instructor in the back. But you always accompany the students with an instructor, because it's a very challenging thing to land a plane the first time and that type of stuff. But we're allowed to take these students out there, and with 1 day of preparation, we put them in the A-10, and they fly it solo, which is really, really aggressive. But it's based on the quality of the students that we're bringing through that we're allowed to do that. And it gives them a lot of confidence in their flying skills. So when I did this, I got a chance to do it 15 years ago, and I was just really excited to get to go solo on my first flight. Did not even see where the other opportunity was heading until we show up for brief the morning of, and they mentioned they loaded up 300 rounds of 30mm shells, and they put 12 practice bombs on the airplane. And I thought they were kidding, or that at least that's just the way they were going to load the airplane so that we'd have the right weight and the right center of gravity. They said, no, no, no. Once you're airborne and everything checks out, you get to turn to the south, go out to the gunnery range, and you get to shoot the 30mm cannon, and you get to drop 12 bombs. So that was a highlight for me of the entire year. And that's something that we give all the student pilots. Now the engineers, they won't go do that. They're not considered qualified aviators, but their IQ, if you will, is off the charts. So we have both of these communities going through the school, but we'll send the pilots down to Davis-Monthan and let them fly the A-10, which is just it's a highlight of the year for the kids. They spend probably 14 to 15 hours a day in academics, in preparation, and in flights. And so it's a very aggressive year. I would say it's probably the most challenging training program in the Air Force because it blends both the flight challenge, learning how to fly things that you've never flown, and also an academic challenge. Because after their 48 weeks with us, we actually award them a Master's of Science degree. So it's a fully accredited master's program laid on top of a full year of flight school, if you will. So two very challenging programs laid on top of each other, and we bring some talented young Americans in and put them in this kind of this human experiment and step back and watch. And it is really something to see the internal motivation to excel at the program. So that's a little bit about your test pilot school. Been out there for almost 70 years now, doing great things for the Air Force, and it's training some of our international partners. Flying everything from the most modern stuff we got to, some would say, the oldest things we have, blimps. But that's a year at test pilot school, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you'd like to talk later, happy to do that as well. Any questions? Yes, sir.
How is it different? Well, how is test piloting different from, say, fighter piloting?
Sure.
I mean, is it just that you have to learn a whole set of different avionics? And the next question is, what are you testing?
Very good question. Test flying is more demanding and much less exciting than operational flying. And so when I was flying operationally, my goal as a young wingman was to become the most lethal F-16 pilot I could be, to learn all those different offensive systems and defensive tactics to be survivable and to prosecute the nation's wars. When you go into the test business, you leave that behind. So that has some very high stress and some very demanding training to get there. Test flying is very benign. It is straight and level, a lot of times non-maneuvering, benign flying. But the exciting part is you'll be the very first person to fly that airplane. And so, assuming everything goes right, it's extremely boring. That's actually good. But every now and then, you get to experience things that there is no training for. You're the first one to ever have the engine quit, if you will, in the F-16, which is a single-engine aircraft. And so there is some very interesting preparedness that you go through, and a lot of engineering that you have to bring into that flight environment. But the actual stick and rudder flying, pretty benign. Now, one thing we expect out of the test pilots is extremely precise flying. So if you want to go out and expand this envelope, define how slow an airplane can go, how fast, how low, how high, how many G's it can pull, if you're familiar with the idea of G-forces. You have to do that in a very precise way so the engineers can bring that data back, run it through the models, and decide if the plane is doing what it was designed to do. And so when they want you at 300 knots, that is give or take 1 knot. And if you're at 302 or 303, your engineers are going to be barking at you, and they should. So we expect very, very precise flying from the pilots, but we don't actually challenge them in the ways that they were probably experiencing when they were growing up as fighter pilots, bomber pilots, cargo pilots, going into small strips under hostile fire. So it's a very different objective and a very different performance requirement. I really enjoy it because it brings in the engineering and a lot more analytical thinking than the operational piece. As far as what we're testing, we test everything from the new stuff. So the F-35, if you're seeing where we're at on that, it's a $1 trillion program. $1 trillion for the F-35. They're going to build several thousand of them if it goes as expected. They're going to sell them internationally. It's going to replace 4 or 5 different airplanes. So that's going on right out here at Edwards. That is the place where the Air Force is testing the F-35. The Navy's buying it, and they're testing it at Pax River at their test facility on the East Coast. So that's the one that catches your attention because it's the newest. It's not even operational yet. They're still trying to decide what they got to fix to make the F-35 ready for the warfighter. But we also test 70-year-old B-52s out there as well. So every airplane that we're flying is constantly going through upgrades. It's constantly going through improvements. They're tinkering with sensors. They're adding new capabilities. And so we test our oldest airplanes all the way through airplanes that haven't even been fielded yet that are still experimental. So we're testing everything. My experience was that they bring you out. So I started off as an F-16 pilot, went to the school, and then I went to teach, to test in the F-16. So I spent 3 more years after the school as an F-16 test pilot here, and then did some other work around the Air Force. But that's the common path, is bring in a tanker pilot, a bomber pilot, a fighter pilot, train them up on being a tester, and then put them back into that community to do that test flying. So we're testing everything we got in the Air Force right out here at Edwards.
Then you do the cargo planes, the
Sure.
C-130.
Sure.
That's basically-
And so I was just, when he went away, is that kind of like the same thing he did? He went to Northern California, I believe it
Okay.
was.
Sure.
So is that kind of like the same kind of training they went through?
It's definitely the same idea.
He's recently retired.
To go to flight school, to get your pilot wings, that's a 1-year program. We got 3 or 4 bases around the country where we're teaching all these student pilots. And so they'll get their wings and they will move into that operational flying, whether it's C-130s, KC-135s, F-16s.
Right.
So that's a 1-year program. And that is the first step into becoming a test pilot. So you got to get your wings first.
Right.
You'll spend 7 or 8 years learning that skill, and then you'll apply for school. We usually get about 300 applications in a year, and we'll take 10 pilots, and then we'll put them in the program here at Edwards for 1 year. So they're already accomplished pilots when we get them, or accomplished engineers when we bring them into TPS.
Right.
But they will locate, they'll relocate to here. They'll spend a year here. Now the one maybe downside or one consequence of being a tester, there's really only 2 bases for the Air Force. It's here, and our sister base that does the weapons side of development is Eglin Air Force Base in Florida.
Yeah, I
So-
remember he was at England one time. But this was 33 years ago.
Sure.
Our son is 33 now.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I was so young then, I didn't understand any of it.
Sure. So I got to fly F-16s operationally in Germany, which was just a hoot. But I came here and now it's been Edwards, Eglin, Edwards, Eglin. That's just what we do in the test business. There's only really 2 places that they're going to have you do that test flying.
I just remember him flying troops over
Sure.
when they needed it.
Our transport pilots, they'll have a base that they're associated with, but they'll spend 3 to 6 months every year just moving supplies all over the world. Did you have a question, sir?
I did. It was about qualifications, which you answered, but then I thought of another question.
Please.
And that is, firemen have to retire when they're 56 years old because otherwise they'll get heart attacks. What about test pilots? Is there any age limit?
There is no age limit short of the normal rank progression in the Air Force. And so for lieutenant colonels at the 28-year point, that is mandatory retirement. Colonels, it's 30. Generals, it can go all the way out to 35. And we do have general test pilots. There's 2 that are on base. So our wing commander, the general that's in charge of basically the entire flight operation at Edwards, all the test programs, and the school, I report to General Schaefer. He's brand new, got here a couple weeks ago. He's a test pilot school graduate. And so he is a general that's doing test flying. And then also at Edwards, you may know that the center that is there, it represents not just the Edwards piece, but also the Florida piece that I mentioned, and several other laboratories all report to the 2-star that sits at Edwards, and he's a test pilot as well. And so generals will be able to fly all the way to the 35 years of service point, or about 52 years old typically. 55 years old if they're able to stay around a little bit longer. But most test pilots usually fly for 20 years, meaning they're about 40 to 42, and then they'll retire, and typically they go to Lockheed or Boeing or Northrop. Those places they'll pay a premium for the training that we receive. So there's a very lucrative commercial side to test flying as well.
Yeah, he flies for United now.
Okay, not a bad job.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And retired as lieutenant colonel.
Oh, good.
Not American or international?
Ooh, now that makes it a little bit more interesting, but I would certainly say that the fighter pilot culture is you want to fly the fastest, the most powerful, the most maneuverable. Right now, operationally, that's the F-22. Nothing in the world even compares to the F-22. So it's got some great stealth capabilities and some unbelievable sensors, but when it comes to maneuverability, nothing is even close. F-22 is just a phenomenal airplane. F-35, though, that is the newest toy under the Christmas tree. So without a doubt, all my students, they all want to go to the F-35. All the staff, the commandant, we all want to go to the F-35. If they would let me fly it, I would sign up in a heartbeat. Because it's the newest thing out there. They're still trying to understand where are the challenges to the airplane, where can we kill pilots if we don't fix it. Those are places that test pilots need to go first before we give it to the warfighter. So F-35 is easily the desire of all the students right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. I have
We test every plane we fly.
the German Tornado is a really interesting airplane, but it's old. So it was F4 equivalent. So I think late 60s, early 70s. It was a swing wing fighter, which means its wings can go backwards to go fast and come forward to slow down and land a little bit slower. But it was a beast. It did not behave well. And so it was very exciting to fly because it flew so poorly. But RF4, I had a chance to fly RF4, not operationally, but just as a sample opportunity. It was pretty bad too. So the German Tornado, I really enjoyed that flying and had a chance to fly several French airplanes, but they have something called an Alpha Jet, which is it's a trainer. It's more modern than the T-38, but it's also still pretty underpowered. It got some bad handling qualities that you really have to understand to make sure you don't get yourself in a corner. But of those two that I've spent the most time in, I would say the German Tornado, really interesting airplane. Did a great mission, but as you got into the 80s and the 90s with the F-16s and the F-15s, the Tornado is just outclassed. But really exciting airplane. Yes, sir?
Just curious, what would you
The
say?
census there would be the Eurofighter, or what they call the Typhoon. And so it came out about 5 years after the F-22, but to be honest, it's not as capable, even though it's a little bit more, call it modern. The performance, as I understand, is pretty good. It's definitely more capable than the F-16 that I grew up in, that's 30 years older. So it has some thrust vectoring, and by that I mean the nozzles at the back of the airplane where the force comes out of that pushes things. Think a rocket. Back there, that nozzle can move, it can swivel. So traditionally, you just kind of waggle the wings, if you will, right? That's the way you turn the airplane. But in this thing, they can move that nozzle around in the back. F-22 does that as well. So the performance, the maneuverability of the Eurofighter, very good. It's not in the class of stealth like the F-22, and it doesn't have the sensors, as I understand it, that the F-22 has. But it is very maneuverable, and it gives the F-22 pilots a run for their money when they're out training. It's a nice competitor. When we fight the F-22 and the F-16, we'll go out and train with those folks. And we say the word fight. We're not really shooting at each other, but we'll go out and meet immediately across from each other, and you start your fight at that point. And the F-22 just roughs up the F-16. It's not a fair fight. The Eurofighter, I believe, can hang in there for a while, but still, nobody can compete with the F-22. The Chinese are making some real advances, and that's something that we keep an eye on. And the Russians built some marvelous airplanes. They've stepped back from that as they're working through all their national challenges, but the Su-27, the Sukhoi-27, and the MiG-29, those were the threats I trained for years on how I would try to defeat in aerial combat. Both of those planes are very capable, but they have not had a lot of advances in the last 20 years. While we've been building the F-22, they've been trying to figure out their national issues. So certainly it's the Eurofighter. Yes, sir.
Can you speak to the...
I've had a chance to fight those folks. When I was in Germany, we had the privilege or the opportunity to be the first U.S. unit to go in and land in Israel and train with our Israeli allies. We've met them out over the Mediterranean several times. Navy pulls a carrier in, they launch from their base. We meet out over the Mediterranean, and they would fight, train, they would land, and they would use phones to debrief. But we had a chance to land there with them at their base and fight the Israelis for 3 weeks. Extremely capable. Extremely capable. They have a lot of real-world experience. And so, unfortunately, I left the operational flying in 2001. I say unfortunately. The nation's been at war for 15 years, which is it's a tragedy. War is not something that you relish, but if you're a trained combat aviator, that's your nation's war. That's what you want to be doing. And so I left in 2001, which is when we got very involved, obviously, in Iraq and Afghanistan. I would say before that, though, we had a long time since our pilots had ever met an adversary in the air. Vietnam, really, because Desert Storm 1 wasn't a fair fight. The few Iraqis that came up got shot down. So we had gone 20 years since we'd had a lot of aerial combat. That's not the case for the Israelis. They train in real-world circumstances all the time. So they're very, very finely trained, and they fly our best hardware. So they don't build a lot of their own stuff, but they fly the F-16 and the F-15, and they fly the heck out of it. So we'll almost always have an Israeli student out at the test pilot school. Right now in the senior class, there's an Israeli. When he graduates in the summer, another Israeli student will join. So we've trained hundreds of Israelis out at the test pilot school. They're very, very accomplished aviators. So I don't want to take too much of y'all's time. I love talking about planes, but Dennis, I would go on forever if you let me.
Yeah.
Paraphernalia, we've got a lot of culture, if you will, in the Air Force. It harkens back to our World War II era primarily. We still wear brown leather bomber jackets, if you will, and we have a lot of patches. Of course, we have all the military regalia, the rank and all that, but the left shoulder is always the wing you're associated with, and a wing is typically a base. It's the place where F-22s are flying operationally, F-15s and so on. And every time you move, you go to a new wing, and on the right shoulder, you go to a new squadron. So squadron's that small unit of 30 to 50 pilots that have that mission. And so as you move around, you'll always pick up a new squadron patch. And typically you'd pick up a new wing patch. But what Dennis is alluding to is once you go through the test pilot school, you get the graduate patch and you get to wear that for your entire service. And so no matter which wing or base I go to, even if I'm at the Pentagon working on the air staff, our headquarters function, you'll always carry your graduate patch on your left shoulder. There's only two programs in the Air Force that get that distinction. It's the test pilot school, and it's what we also would probably call Top Gun if you're familiar with the Navy equivalent that had a great movie in the 80s, which we have to replace at some point with Air Force propaganda. But Top Gun was an outstanding movie, and we have a very similar program in the Air Force. It's called the Weapons School. And so weapons school graduates are our most capable tactical aviators or transport pilots. So the C-130, C-17 folks can go through weapons school, but certainly its heritage, if you will, is the fighter community. And to be a weapons school graduate, you get to wear that patch. It looks very similar. It's a shield, but it's gray and it's got a bomb striking a target on it, as opposed to what's supposed to be a futuristic shape. Now this airplane, this patch was designed in the 40s, so this just looks regular, but that was a big deal, and this is pretty geeky. That's a slide rule. And some of y'all may be old enough to understand what a slide rule is, but it was before calculators. It's the way that folks would do math using big numbers. You could divide on a slide rule two big, large numbers, right? So our weapons school graduates have a bomb. That's the mission of the Air Force, is to attack the enemy. And your testers, we have a slide rule. But that said, it is a very proud heritage. Graduates, this is the patch they covet. So they will come and subject themselves to that 48-week course. They'll work 14-hour days for weeks on end. They get to do some fantastic flying, but ultimately what they're looking to do is to be that graduate, to get the patch, and they get to join the test community.
Thank you. If you all don't know who I am, I'm Mike Garrett, president at Rosamond Youth Football. I think Dennis said that already. I want to thank the council for letting me speak and Ryan for getting this set up for me. Tonight I want to talk about a couple things before I get to the presentation real quick. Last year's participation, we had about 124 kids go through our program. Out of the 4 eligible divisions, we sent 2 into the playoffs. And also in my 6 years of being involved in the program, we had 3 female heads-up tackle football players for the first time. Very excited about that, and they did really well. And then also our organization is already off to a good start this year. We officially kick off July 27th. Place of practice is still up in the air, but we're working on that. And we're currently signing up. As of tomorrow, we'll be signing up participants over at Glendower Park from 1 to 3 p.m. And let's see here. Where else was it?
That's this Saturday?
Yes, sir. And let's see here. I knew I'd lose it. Okay. Well, the other exciting part is with the football program this year in connection with the High Desert Conference we belong to, we have joined the American Youth Football League, which is an international organization. That's going to enable us to kind of standardize our rules, our ages and weights that go along with like the Junior All-American and the Pop Warner Leagues. And it also now will allow us to do postseason regional play and national play. So our drive is to get there and go to Florida.
Our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Speech.
Our other next sponsor is Mid-American Solar, which is now BHE Renewables. And Bin Sanitation. And Guido's Old Time Pizzeria. And Nation Security Services. And last but not least, Carl's Hardware. Also, just want to let everybody know, since we weren't able to have the video presentation available this evening, oh, I'm sorry, it's not last but not least, Mr. John Joyce and Rosamond News.
Is that good?
You bet.
Go closer there. Take a step closer there, buddy.
Wait.
Yeah, take a step. He's gonna get some closer.
Area per barrel of oil this year, the price locked in $55 per barrel, which was a $44 million hit to our general fund this year, and a $17 million hit to the fire fund, because they have their own separate tax that they get. We're not sure what the impact of county services is going to be at this time, if it's going to be felt, where it's going to be felt. As the departments and different departments bring their budgets forward and propose them, we'll have a lot better idea. And all that should be finalized July, August time, so we'll get a better idea of what the impact's going to be. I will say Supervisor Scribner's #1 priority for him is obviously public safety, and that is government's primary role is public safety. And he understands that and takes that very seriously. As far as closer to home here in Rosamond, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the Diamond Street project now. It's a $1.9 million project, duly funded from a grant that the county received from the state and federal government, a transportation enhancement grant, and also funded through our county roads department. They're going to be putting in the sidewalks and the curb and gutters and the diagonal parking, stamping the intersections, all this, and the street lights, all the stuff we've reported for the past year or so, and they're expecting that to be done by the end of May, which is a little over a month from now.
Question on it. It looks like they're putting in the water lines today, but they're for potable water. Is it possible then to add some purple pipe in there, since it's basically everything's going to be watered, it's going to be shrubs?
I could find out.
Yeah, if you could check on that, that would be
Sure.
good.
A little late for that. What was the amount?
Well, they got the ditches stuck today, so it might not be too late, that's what I'm
What
saying.
was the amount of the money?
1.9 million.
1.9, okay.
And yeah, that's pretty exciting. They expect that to be done by the end of May. They are planning a ribbon cutting ceremony. The county with the Chamber of Commerce, kind of a dual ribbon cutting ceremony upon the completion of the Diamond Street project. So date to come. We don't know. God willing, maybe it'll rain and delay the project a couple weeks and get some well-needed water. So we'll see.
Okay.
Sure. My name is Julian irigoyen, and I'm the Mojave commander here, East Curd. Before I give you some statistics for March, I'd like to let you know that this week is Dispatcher Appreciation Week. So if you can or are able to, reach out and give a thanks to those people that are otherwise recognized that get us to and from and handle those 911 calls. It would be appreciated. It's also Distracted Driver Awareness Month, and so we are on a month-long campaign for distracted drivers. Just a couple quick reminders that talking on your cell phone in the speaker mode with it in your hand is still a violation of the hands-free device. So you don't want it to be in your hands even though it's being utilized with the speaker mode. And then just always remember, utilize that Bluetooth while you're operating the vehicle.
This might be a silly question, but you see those like Clever Grip commercials? I don't know if any of you guys have seen those. They like plug into your air vent.
Oh yes.
You put your phone in. Are those legal to talk on the phone?
Yeah, so long as it's hands-free. And that's utilizing your speaker mode. So I
So
see
even like the seat next to you, you can just say.
yes. Yeah, some people I see that I've stopped before, not for that violation, but they'll be utilizing the speakerphone in their visor. And they'll have the phone just right up there. They can push it and answer it in the speaker mode. So as long as you're not utilizing it with your hands. Keep both hands on the wheel.
Your dispatcher's in Bishop, though, is that right?
Yes, in East Kern, thank you. East Kern, we are dispatched out of Bishop Communications
So
Center.
if we're gonna appreciate our dispatchers, we have to go to Bishop and do some fishing, or what?
That's a possibility. Yeah, I'm sure they don't mind that. But, you know, just a letter or a call to think of. Not using 911.
Send them some flowers.
I'm sorry?
Is there a web link for that?
Yes, if you go to our department's website, chp.ca.gov, you can get any area office, telephone number, communication centers. It would be a nice thing to do. So for March stats, our department received from Bishop Communication Center 395 cellular 911 calls. We made 3 arrests here in the Rosamond area, handled 3 abandoned vehicle calls, 7 traffic hazard calls, 2 loose animal calls. We handled 1 disabled vehicle call, 2 medical emergencies where we responded and assisted, 17 traffic collisions that weren't hit and run related, and 3 hit and run traffic collisions. And then we responded to calls for 21 reckless driver or speed contests, and of those 41, we were able to locate and disposition 8 of those. So if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to.
Does part of your area include Highway 395?
Yes, US 395, it does. Towards the Ridgecrest area, once it goes from San Bernardino County into Kern County. That's handled by our office. The south end of 395 into San Bernardino County, south of 58, is handled by our Barstow office.
Because you mentioned 395 cell phone calls.
I'm sorry?
There were 395 calls from cell phones?
395, our dispatch center received
That's the number,
395.
not the highway.
See the irony?
Yeah.
They're all 395.
There's more than 58, don't see.
Oh, that's true.
Miller, Helena Hatcher, Albert Gatton, myself and Paul. We also have a couple of people who have supported us quite a bit here, Lieutenant Irigoyen and Sergeant Anton. We thank you very much for that. We did have our quarterly Coffee with the Cop meeting last night. We had 46 people attend that, so it was one of our best meetings yet. Our regular meetings are the 3rd Wednesday of each month, next door at 6 p.m. We also do our monthly community cleanup. That's on the 3rd Saturday of each month. So this coming Saturday will be the April one, and we're going to be cleaning up the field over beside Albertsons. We got a permit today. We are permitted, we're legal. We have from the frontage road, Rosamond Boulevard, all the way over to 25th up to, I think it's Starlight. So we'll, as much of that area as we can get done. We start at 8 o'clock, but we ask that everybody be there around 7:45 to get signed in, have the safety orientation, get your safety gear, and kick it off. And then we will be feeding everyone again. It'll be Guido's. Guido's will be providing pizza for us again this month.
And I just wanted to add to, Gail and I went around town one day. It seems like what's really making the community look bad is the white shopping bags, plastic shopping bags. Because they really don't carry any weight, they just blow in the wind. And even though from Iverson, they still blow way over the Sierra Highway and this track area here. So one of our folks is now, because it's hard to have enough time to completely clean up all the trash. But so we're going to try to focus more on the visible trash that really detracts from the beauty of the landscape. And that seems to be most of the plastic bags. So that's something we such a serious issue in our town, it just really needs to be abated.
Okay, a detailed meeting a week ago. First of all, the park. The West Park Park, also known as the Jim Williford Park, that was given back to the county about 3 weeks ago. So Kern County has now got their own park back. Never was the Community Services District Park. Community Service District, just so you know, in 1998 got the ability to do parks but no money to go along with it. And with their discretionary funds that came in about that time were $175,000 a year. The board of directors there built United Street Park and built that park up, and it was a pretty nice park. And then after they got the park built, they decided in about 2008 that they were going to take the sand out of the West Park pool and get that park going. So they said, hey, Kern County, would you give us the park? And the Kern County said, sure, we'll give you the park, whatever money we have coming in from the CSAs over there, which are only about half the money to make that park run. And so from 2008 to this year, the Rosamond Community Service District borrowed $2 million from its sewer and water funds to pay for parks. In addition to that, it used the entire $230,000 a year it had for discretionary funds to pay for that park. So by letting go of that park, it saves the Rosamond Community Service District taxpayers, ratepayers, $337,000 every year, including $230,000 in discretionary funds, which we'll get to later. Because there's 5 different things the Community Service District does. They do water and sewer, which are the main things, street lighting, graffiti abatement, which usually costs no more than about $10,000 a year, and parks and recreation. The last meeting we had 2 weeks after we had given the park back to the county, we would agree to follow through on our promise we made on March 11th, and that was that we would pay for to turn the streetlights back on, and because some had been turned off, and to pay in other words, pay the back bill and pay the $11,000 extra that we had, because some 110 lights had been removed. It's $100 a light to put them back in, to pay to put them back on. And we borrowed $50,000 from the water and sewer funds to pay that if we need to. But the difference is, this time we have a mechanism for paying it back. Come July 1st, we will have obviously $50,000 in discretionary funds. We're going to actually have $203,000 in discretionary funds. But of that, we're going to take $50,000 from the street lighting fund and pay off water and sewer for the 25 each that they, if up to 25,000 each that they offered to give us. The last thing is, if you've gotten used to or comfortable with sewer fees being on your property tax bills, well, we voted to take them off your property tax bills. So no longer will your your sewer fee show up on your property tax bill. That was quite a bit of sticker shock, especially for senior citizens, people who lived a long time in this community, to see more than half their bill be the sewer fee bill. Our reasoning behind that is, on one hand, the argument was, it's not, well, why take it off? It's the same fee. Why keep it on if it's the same fee if people don't want it on there? And then, by and large, it was quite clear in the election results. The 2 people who put it counted by their name got 650 votes. The people who said we're going to take the sewer fees off the property tax bills got about twice that. I think the people who voted in the community, it was pretty clear that they didn't want sewer fees on the property tax bills. And they came out very timely, property tax bills, about October 1st for a November 4th election. So, at any rate, it was a very long meeting. Everybody has a chance to give their say there. If you haven't been to the Community Service District meeting, I know JD's made it there, and of course Scale and Paul Warnick. And we have our publicist right here, Mr. Tom. I made it, of course. But they've been very interesting meetings, and everybody has a chance to give their say. We have a former president of the California Special Districts Association, Ed McKay, who is our president, and he runs a pretty good meeting. If you have input on that, we just got the agenda released today, controversy on it this time, but there's always something good on there. And we appreciate do you remember what's on there, John?
Well, I think it's important to let the public know about the regular hours that the district's going to be open.
All right, yeah, we also voted back in early March that we would be open on Fridays now. So the district, starting in May, will be open on Fridays. You need to pay your bill on Fridays. You can go to the community service district and pay your bill on Fridays. If you have any other concerns you want to express to the people at the community service district, it's a 5-day-a-week district. Something that Ed McKay had campaigned on was to put the services back in the name. Not that it was ever taken out. It's the Rosamond Community Services District. But since that's the idea of what we're doing, we can do it for the same funds, just a matter of shifting people around. We are open now 5 days a week. And our next meeting is not Wednesday night. That's one thing to keep in mind, though. Our next meeting will be Tuesday night, the 21st. Is that right? Yeah. The 21st. So if you're going to make it, we have a closed session at 6 p.m. and at 7 o'clock we'll do the open session. And you're all welcome to come there. You can get there early if you like, hang out, or if you want to get something to eat first and come at 7, we'll do that as well.
That was a one-time change, right?
Just a one-time meeting change that the President, McKay, and is taking one other board member up to Sacramento to learn about Prop 218. And one of the things we're looking forward to putting on an agenda in the future is under Prop 218, that's how you raise or lower rates. And one of the things we want to look into is some of the savings we've had from the parks coming off the books. And it's been run a little bit more efficiently as we can see if we can't get a lower rate for your water. Even if it's just a small adjustment, we'd like to see that happen. So any input on that, any input on ideas would be helpful. The other thing is you've been hearing a lot about the drought. Number one, pray for rain. Number two, the next best step is to get rid of the man-made drought that occur primarily with the delta smelt. It has to be temperature controlled. Too much water has to go downstream, which could be going this way. Number three, we can build more dams. We can keep more water in the hills when it rains, so that we're not so dependent on just snow. What's happened this year is we got a lot of rain, but it was warm, so the higher elevations, it wasn't a lot of snow that stayed there. So some of those are things that you can ask your assemblyman, your state senator, and of course Governor Brown. Hey, let's build some dams. We've got the water running off out to nowhere. Let's keep it up where we can use it. What I perused here, because I just got it this afternoon, was that we have until December 22nd to comply. So there'd be plenty of time for your prayers to be answered and some rain happening here in April, May. But that doesn't happen. For some reason, it applies across the board. The district in the past has bought into a water bank that would definitely supply enough water. Other things that have happened in our community, if you don't know, there's no more Williams Alfalfa Ranch there next to the Sky Park. There's no more Mississippi Ranch there at 40th and Rosamond Boulevard that would be using a lot of water. Our groundwater levels have been pretty steady, but that doesn't mean we can't not conserve, especially since 3 years from now we need to find another source anyway, because we're supposed to start using, instead of 600 acre feet, or instead of 3,000 acre feet, which we can use well water for now, virtually 99%, we're supposed to get back to 600 that we use for well water, unless we get rights from different farmers or different areas to make up that 2,400 acre feet, and you're not allowed to rely on AVEC. So the water bank is looking more and more attractive to meet what's required from the adjudication, which, anybody here heard about the adjudication, know about the adjudication? At any rate, I don't want to bore you with that, but it's a 10-year process. It's supposed to be wrapped up August 3rd. And there was a stipulated judgment entered into in January, and bottom line is that we have like 3 to 5 years to cut back on how much water we draw down, because the basin here, the Antelope Valley Basin, has been adjudicated to be in a state of overdraft, and as such, we're supposed to stop overdrafting. And again, a lot of that comes back to praying for rain, number one. Number two, because we can start getting water into the water banks, not just ours, but the AVEC water banks, and start bringing that water level back up in areas and having it stored in a manner that's not going to evaporate. The water goes in the ground. Back around 1900, the water level was 10 in Rosamond. You have woolly mammoths, bones here at the edge of town, saber-toothed tigers. That water level has dropped steadily as they've grown alfalfa over the years, which means we have basically a great big empty lake of ground we can put water into. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to do that over time. And again, big picture, long term, we need to work on getting more water down here for Northern California. That's why that tunnel is so important, and doing it in the most cost-effective way possible.
We're supposed to be in the business of pumping water out of the ground, out of the wells.
No. APEC is a wholesaler.
Do you know they're pumping?
If they have a water bank, then they can do that, I suppose. Whether they're doing it to test things, or what are they doing it for?
They're pumping 18 billion gallons a day right now, about 2 miles away from our water bank. And I have a hard time believing that they're going to just get their water, not get our water. And they're going to put more wells online. Our bank is about, what, it's north of A at 150th, maybe what, a mile north?
Where's Brandy at when we need it? We don't have them here.
And they're pumping at 140th at B. And some of these old farm wells, they're putting back into commission. They have manifolds out there that they're putting the water into. They are finding more, they're not finding, they're going to commission more of the older, big casing wells out there.
Are they taking out more water than they're putting in?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Because if they are, then that would be something, they'd be in the state of overdraft, they'd be in violation of the adjudication, number one, and number two, if they were taking water that otherwise would coming from our plume, that's something we need to talk to them about.
Well, get on it, because it's happening, and they're gonna put more wells online.
Okay.
This is just rough math, 25,000 acre feet a year that they're taking out.
And how much are they putting in?
I don't know how much they're putting in.
Yeah,
Half of the water's going to LA.
if they're putting LA's water in there to begin with, they can do that. If they're not, then they're in violation of the ordinance.
Yeah, I would
Okay,
like to find somebody who could get into that.
Okay.
all right.
I passed out to the RCSD member, or the RMAC members here, just a little bit of information on the Diamond Street project, just stating that they started on or about March 16th. Their original plan was to finish up about June 12th, and just has some brief information of what's going to be going on with the project. Contact information if you have any questions on the construction as well. We did have a meeting earlier tonight. We are going to be holding a election next month on May 21st. We currently have 5 people that are running for board positions. We do have 2 board positions that will become available. We also had 13 new members join since our last meeting, which brings us up to about 62 currently paid members. And was there anything else that we really need to hit on? I don't think so. I think that's the most of the stuff. Anybody have any questions about the chamber at this time?
I have no room on many rosters for our general public tours until October, and that tour is almost full. This tour attracts people from all over the world. One of the responsibilities I've got is making sure that the folks who are not U.S. citizens are, their information is input into the DoD foreign business system. We've had visitors from Italy and China, Belgium, Australia, a number from the United Kingdom, quite a few. It's a real melting pot. One of the things that I tried to, and that we're doing, is as long as these people are coming here for this tour anyway, there are other Rosamond, or not just Rosamond, but local area Antelope Valley attractions that they might want to take advantage of while they're here. So at the 2-week out gate for the tour, we'll send all the people that have signed up an email and saying, listen, as long as you're going to be in the area anyway, why don't you consider visiting the exotic feline breeding compound, or the museum up at Ridgecrest, or the Blackbird Air Park, or Lancaster Water Aerospace Water. I've got a whole list of them. Put the Plane Crazy event in there so they would find out about that.
Yeah, Mojave Chamber of Commerce is having Plane Crazy Saturday from 10 to 2 out at Mojave
This
Airport. This Saturday, so.
Yeah, if you haven't been to one, I would highly recommend it. So.
And this time is the Experimental Aircraft Association that's putting on a fly-in. So if you want to look at a bunch of funky looking airplanes, or airplanes that just aren't quite production type airplanes that are fast, fun, and affordable, now's a chance to go up there and check that out.
Okay. We have a new commanding officer, as Colonel Webb pointed out earlier. Is now the new wing commander, Brigadier General Carl Schaefer. And he also mentioned that there are just so many bases that people who get into the test community can go to. So these folks are forever cycling through. So I've worked with him several times, and I know him to be an outstanding individual. I'm very happy that he's going to take over the job. Major General Bunch will be getting a new job, moving along. And I honestly don't remember the name of the guy that's going to take his place, but that change of command will be here shortly as well. All right. And for the latest news, it's available all the time at that website I gave you earlier, at www.edwards.af.mil. Our stories are posted there that our staff produces. And it's also a good place to pick up other Air Force news as well. So it's a really good source. You know, we've got about 10,500 people who work on the base. Of that number, only about maybe 2,100 or so are military. All the rest are government civil service or contractor folks. It's a pretty highly skilled workforce. It's just right down the street. It's a major generator. Something you'll notice if you haven't been to the base recently is that they finally opened up the visitor control center just outside the west gate. The building has been there for several years. They had the money to erect the building, but not money to furnish it or put in all the stuff they need to operate correctly. But it's after a lot of years of working at it, it's finally open. So you don't go to the guard shack anymore Monday through Friday from 6 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 or whatever time they open until 4 in the afternoon. You go to the visitor control center. There's new signage to direct you to that. So that's the place to go to get a pass now. They didn't include any money to expand the parking lot, and they were really shocked to learn that most of that parking lot belongs to me for the tours. They have a little bit over the side, but because they were all set to go find someplace else to start your tours, and that's not how that works. So
I've known for several years that use the dial ride. They have to make an appointment a week in advance. That seems to me to be just about ridiculous. I could understand maybe 4 hours in advance, but a week, that wouldn't fit my program at all. One of the men that I know that uses dial ride a lot, he told me, I guess the day prior to when I talked to him, that he was there 15 minutes early. And they give you a 15-minute envelope that the bus is going to be there. He was 15 minutes before the envelope started. He waited 45 minutes after the envelope closed. And then he finally calls Dial-A-Ride and he says, oh yeah, we were already there. Well, he knew they hadn't been. So the drivers are doing one thing and the office is saying something else. And I think that we could improve that if we look into that a little bit. So let's go from there.
Which county department runs it?
What stop does he usually use, do you know? The one by Albertsons, or do you know? Or do they pick him up?
I don't know.
Pick him up at his house, or?
Dial-A-Ride picks you up at your house. Regional Transit does Hummel, Holland, Albertsons.
Okay.
That's the bus.
Okay, I don't even know that.
Okay.
So you're talking about the Dial-A-Ride, not the regional?
I believe it's Dial-A-Ride.
Dial-A-Ride,
I didn't realize there's two different buses.
Yeah, Dial-A-Ride, you have to call and make the appointment, and they'll pick you up.
Okay,
And then the regional transit bus
That's
picks
a
you
regular
up here at
schedule.
Hummel Hall or at Albertsons.
and they just, okay, then
They'll
it would
go
be
to all the way
Dollarite
to
I'm talking about.
Bakersfield and to Lancaster.
Okay,
That's-
because he goes out the boulevard.
Yeah, that would be Dial-A-Ride.
Okay, these two people that I know, that they use Dollarite then.
My neighbor does too.
Yeah, yeah, are they happy with them?
I see her use it maybe once a month, so.
Okay, yeah.
Is it run by the same county department?
I'll have to find out.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
Because maybe it would be appropriate to, if it is the same department, have that person in to talk about what the services they offer.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent suggestions.
Yeah, it's
Well,
a good guy runs the regional transit. I'll see if he's,
Yeah,
has
this-
Dial-A-Ride under his purview. So.
okay, let's figure that out. Okay, director, agenda items,